Hello everyone, welcome to the TSS. In this class we are going to discuss about how to route URLs that are changing from time to time, or the URLs that is dynamic in nature. Okay, in the last class what we had gone through is a normal URL routing. Normal in the sense means the URLs that are not changing, that are stable, that are not changing from time to time. But in this class we are going to study the URLs that are uh, not uh, uh, not not constant, it is changing, right? So how to route that kind of URLs, because while developing a web application there may be many situations to handle the URLs that are varying in nature. Okay, so let us discuss this important topic in today's class. All right, so how we can accomplish this routing of dynamically changing URLs means, let me first let me discuss the URL pattern, friends. Okay, so for example, this is the URL, total URL, http://www.mywebsite.com/book, right? And then slash variable URL name. The blue letters indicates the constant unchanging URL, right? Up to this part it will not change, it is stable, it is constant. But after book, right, this part of URL will change, right? So that's why it is called as variable part. This is constant part, right? For example, what's the book name? The book being the constant, book names will be different, right? And then what's the book ID, right? And what's the book price? Different book names has different book IDs and different prices, right? So this is a one example, right? So now how to accomplish the URLs like this? Some part is unchanging, some part is changing, and how to route these specific URLs to the functions. That is a topic we are going to discuss. So this type of URLs we should define inside the root decorator. Okay, so inside the root decorator we have to define this pattern, both the constant pattern and the variable pattern we have to define. How we have to define, we will see now, right? So here you can see the rest of the code I am not explaining, I am only concentrating on this decorator method. Okay, so inside root, in the last classes what we saw, only hello, that's it. But this is different. So after book I am appending a variable part. This book is a constant part of the URL, and the name is variable part of the URL. The name may be changed, so the book may be a Python basics book, or the book may be a Java basics. The book name keeps on changing, right? Okay, so now how to handle this one? So we have to define like this. Inside the angular brackets we need to give one custom name. Okay, after that what will happen is the pattern which we have defined here within the angular brackets, that part will be supplied as a keyword argument to the function, friends. Okay, whatever you name here, the content which the content of the URL which user visits in the web browser, right? Like book space book slash Python basics. If user types like that, so that Python basics will be stored inside this name here as a keyword argument. and then the function will do its own logic and returns the output to the end user, friends. Okay, understood? First of all, user visits the web browser and the user gives the pattern like this, like book, and after that some Python lovers will give /Python basics because he want to study Python basics, and on the other day some Java lovers will come and they will give book /Java basics like that, and then some other persons come and they will give like C sharp, something like that. So the book part will remains constant, and after the book name may change, right? So we should deal all those URLs, right? So whatever the variable name the user types in the web browser as a URL, that content will come and store inside the keyword argument, friends. That is the bottom line here to understand. And then the function will do its own processing and then returns the content to the end user like this. It is book name colon, this is string formatting, friends. In the Python basics classes I had elaborately discussed the Python string formatting, right? Because it is a string, we have to give %s and then the substitution %name, right? So in this %s, whatever the name which the URL has typed by the visitor, that name will be substituted here and it will be returned as a response to the end user, friends. Okay, so that is the explanation of the code snippet. Now we are moving to the practical session. I am opening this VS Code. Yeah, so this all being the same, we have to concentrate on this line, right? Line number 5. In the root decorator, we need to define the dynamic URL, right? Like suppose say book, and then after book, up to book it is constant, it is not changing. After that it may change. So the changing URLs you should place inside the angular brackets. For string, let's say take name, okay, name, and then this name should be given as a keyword argument to the underlying function, and then the function will do its own processing and returns the string. Now we are not doing any processing, just returning the response by taking that content which is stored inside that name, right? Book name is $s and then sorry, not dollar, percentage, and then name. So what this line is doing, so the user typed some content after the book, right? After typing this URL pattern like this, that is after typing all these things, http ://127.0.0.1 :5000 / after slash user should give book, okay, up to book it is constant. After that user should give anything, it may be Python basics, it may be Java basics, it may be cookbook or anything, okay, that part is changing. The variable part will be stored inside this name as a keyword argument, and the keyword argument the function will take and do its own processing and then return it as a HTML response to the end user, friends. Okay, okay, let me execute it, let me save it first. Yeah, because we had given debug is equal to true parameter to the run method, that's why it is the web server internally detects the code changes and it will restart automatically by itself, friends. Okay, after saving the file. Now we need to open the web browser, and we need to go the URL pattern like this. Okay, up to this part it is home URL, right? And then book slash say Python basics, right? Python basics. It is not coming. Here trailing slash must and should be there. Okay, here you can see the book name is Python basics. The Python basics is supplied by the end user. Okay, so that is insidely it is told in this function as a keyword argument, and it was returned here, right? Now some other person will come and he will give like Java basics book I want. Now the book name is Java basics. Now you can able to understand. Now this part is constant and this part is changing, dynamically changing. So that changed URL we should handle inside our code, right? And like what cricket, like cricket basics. Okay, whatever we are going to give after this book, that content will be given as a response, or we can do anything we want because I am not defining any function body here, right? Okay, so I think by now you got the point, friends. Okay, the changing URL is a variable URL, it is a dynamic URL we must handle inside our backend script. Okay, so this content will be stored inside the function as a keyword argument, and then the function will do its own processing and returns the response, right friends? And this is in case of string pattern. Okay, now I am simply giving a string after the book. What if I give any number? Okay, if I give any number, let us test, say some 52. So it is book name is 52. Internally it converts this 52 into the string. It will not treat it as a number, right? So for that if we want a pure integer number, then we need to define the root decorator like this. All right, let me explain the code snippet here. So whatever you give here, it will understand it as a string but not as a number. Okay, so let me explain this second snippet. If you want a book number, okay, as a purely a number, then we need to define like this: inside the angular brackets int data type int colon id. So this id is the name and it is the data type, and this id internally will be supplied to the function as a keyword argument, right? And rest of the processing is same. This function will do its own processing and return the HTML response like this. Okay, here we are giving the format specifier as D, that is decimal. Here S stands for string, right? So this is book ID. Okay, so let us move to the VS Code. Now I need to define int colon id, right? And here also I will supply id, and the book number is, we need to change the format specifier as well, id. Okay, right? So After book, if you give 55 or 25 like that, it will come and store as a keyword argument, and then it will return the response to the end user. Okay, let me save it. So the server restarted, and now I will give some 100. Okay, the book number is 100, right? You may ask, in the earlier case also it is coming, now also it is coming, what is the difference? Okay, so the difference being, it is displaying here, okay, but it is a pure native integer number. That means we can add it with our own additions, multiplications, whatever we wish we can do, right? So let me suppose addition. We'll add some say total is equal to like that. I will add 10 to the ID. Okay, the ID will be substituted here. Whatever the ID, the user gives here, that will come and add to the 10, and it is stored in the total variable, and I will give total here. Now see what happens. Now I am giving 200. What must be the result? 210. Here 210 came, no? I am supplying 200 as an ID, but here 210 comes up. That means what? The 200 is treated as number, and that is only, it is that's why it was added to the 10, and the total was displayed back to the user. Now all this is why it is coming like this, because we explicitly defined this variable part of the URL must be an integer data type. Okay, then only the addition is possible. If I am not defining as an integer, if I just open my angular brackets and given this like this, then this Flask will treat it as a defaultly as string, then it leads to some error because it is a number, it is a string. What will happen? Let us see. I had saved, and then 200 here, type error. It leads to type error. Why? Because 200 is a, for external appearance it is a number, but internally it is a string. This is integer and this is string. The plus, that means addition, is not possible between a string data type and integer data type. So that is why we need to define it as integer. Okay, now everything should work, hopefully, right? Okay, that is the reason. Okay friends, and if you want to pass the variable part as a float values like 10.5 like prices, okay, the book price. So the best example is book price. So in the first two code snippets we had discussed passing a string as a part of variable URL and integer as a part of variable URL. And now in case of if you need to pass float values to this as a variable part to the URL, then you need to specify the data type as float and colon the name you wish. Okay, I am giving it as price, and internally that price is applied to this function as a keyword argument, and then it will do its own processing. Let me, here I have to tell it as price. Okay, so now let me check inside this. It is float and it is price, and the price should be supplied to this keyword argument, and I am not taking this. Book price is, since it is float, the format specifier we have to use is float, right? So now the user opens the web browser and gives some float value as a part of variable URL. Then that content, that value is substituted as a keyword argument here, and then it returns to the end user friends. Okay, let me save it. The server restarted with the updated code. And now instead of giving 200 or string, I must pass say 10.5. Here the book price is 10.5. okay, like that, rupees or something, or we can append something like RS, rupees. Now yeah, 10.5, so on. So we can slice off these zeros if we don't want. So this is a default behavior, and I will give some 56.89. Here you can see it was updated with this 56.89 rupees. That means what? This part of the URL is unchanging, and this part of the URL is changing, and we are able to map this dynamically changing URLs to the function and make that function return the HTML response accordingly to the end user friends, right? So this is it. And if you, for example, if you don't give the float, and if you give some integer like this 80, so what it is telling? 404 error. 404 means page not found, because this particular URL pattern doesn't matches with this URL pattern here. That's why the Flask searches all these roots, and if it finds, then it will return the function output. If it doesn't find, it will give 404 error. So since we had defined it as a float, the integer values will not take. Same in the case of string also. Say I will give say Veera. Now also it is not taking. Why? Veera is a string, and is there any pattern that matches this URL pattern with the defined patterns? No, only float we had defined, but we didn't define the string pattern and the integer pattern. That's why 404 error resulted, right friends? So this is it, and in the next class we will discuss some more topics in the Flask friends. Till then, bye bye. Yours Veera signing off. Thank you for listening.